Oy vey, I've realized we have been pretty anti-Semitic. We need to shut that down.
That is what $7,000 gets you, everyone.
It's October 7th, Rob. How could you play that? Are you sick?
What are you talking about? Why would I not play that on?
Are you crazy?
On the Feast of the Most Holy Rosary? Why would I not play that?
I can't believe you played that. That's just outlandish. Anyway. Tabby's out of his mind, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Oy vey. We do. And we have Ryan Grant joining us shortly. Stop. Get me off screen. I hate this. Knock it off. Okay, so we have Ryan Grant joining us shortly. I actually texted Rob before the show, and I said, I think we need to start paying very close attention to the liturgical calendar, because a lot of the Marian feast days on the liturgical calendar are there because they mark a historical event in Catholic history, like something significant in Catholic history. And they're usually named after a Marian feast day, but something important happened. They attribute it to Our Lady's intercession, and then they put it on the calendar.
I just would like to point out, I brought this up like 2 or 3 years ago, and you were like, no one will watch those.
No, that's not what I said.
That's basically what you said.
No, I said I don't have the time to like learn about this stuff. But what happened today? So I'm like going to the traditional liturgy for 7 years now. I've heard about the Battle of Lepanto for years. Here's my request for the Lepanto poem in Hawaiian Pidgin.
Chesterton and Pidgin.
Yeah, they wanted in Hawaiian Pidgin. Possibly we could possibly do Hawaiian Pidgin Chesterton tonight. No more scripture. I felt dirty after doing scripture.
Yeah, no scripture, but anything
I didn't feel
else.
right after. So what happened today? I've been hearing about the Battle of Lepanto forever. Our friend Michael Hitchborn, one of our best friends, has the Lepanto Institute, but I've never done a deep dive into it. And I spent the whole day today learning about the Battle of Lepanto. And not just that, I fell in love with Pope St. Pius V.
I have it in Pidgin, by the way, whenever you're ready.
I'm sure. I fell in love with Pope St. Pius V today. The events that were happening in Europe during his papacy are just unbelievable. You have in 1571, so he only had a 6-year papacy. He's elected Pope in 1566 and he dies in 1572.
Yep.
He basically is elected Pope right after the Council of Trent closes. He gives us the Tridentine Mass, like he's the one who actually, puts it down formally. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that would be called, but
he promulgates
it. There you go. He promulgates the Tridentine Mass. He excommunicates Elizabeth I, this is after Henry VIII. It's Henry VIII's daughter. She's basically slaughtering Catholics in England. He excommunicates her and tells Catholics they no longer owe her fealty. Like, you guys don't have to actually obey her. You have can
you imagine a pope doing that today?
Unbelievable. Like, he calls together the Holy League. Mike Lewis is in the chat. My priest brother's first homily as a deacon was 14 years ago today. He preached on the Rosary in the Battle of Lepanto. Mike, we're going to do your article, and I'm gonna because Mike wrote an article about trads. He mentioned me and Brian Holdsworth in it, and I think he has some fair criticisms in it. So if you want to stick around for that, Mike, if you can I give Mike a free local subscription?
We're giving Mike Lewis a free.
Can I give Mike a free local subscription?
I'm going to charge you personally $5 for
it. Like, DM me your email. I'll get you one.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'll get you a free local sub, Mike. So we have Ryan Grant coming on, but I think he'll be a good guest for going through some of Mike's critiques. So we'll do that. But so Pope St. Pius V is Pope during all of these tumultuous events in history. So while this is going on, France is kind of at war with Spain, and they're allied like with the Muslims in some ways, because they kind of want the Muslims to defeat Spain.
So were the German Protestants.
So are the German Protestants, right? Now, Spain just discovered the New World, so they kind of have their resources stretched.
Okay, that's kind of funny.
So you have Spain is kind of extended it in the New World, right? They're down in the West Indies, and they're dealing with what they have over there, so they don't really want to get involved. England is in turmoil because they just had their revolution in their country. So what happens is Pope St. Pius V calls together the Holy League. With the Holy League, it's basically Charles V's bastard son comes to this. So Ryan just popped in. Ryan, I watched your video today on the Battle of Lepanto. You did it a couple of years ago on Steve Cunningham.
That's right. That was years ago. Goodness. I almost forgot about that.
And I got a chance to watch that. So I've been looking for a good show to have you come on. I didn't want to have you just come on for some random, shoot the crap show, because like you're somebody who could actually bring some substance and value to a conversation. So this conversation is one of the perfect ones to have you on for. So when you mentioned that you were free tonight, I was very happy.
We bring other people like Joshua Charles on for the stupid crap shows.
Yes, exactly. he's here for our lowbrow commentary, but
right.
So I was just telling them I've never done like a deep dive into the Battle of Lepanto, and I fell in love with Pope St. Pius V today, just learning about the whole situation that's going on in the world during this time. And I was getting to the part where Charles V's bastard son then comes to lead the Holy League. Now, it's kind of interesting because at this time you have primogeniture is a very big thing in Europe. So second-born sons don't really have an inheritance. So they are typically the guys who will go and join like the Knights Templar and all these different leagues, because they want to kind of make a name for themselves because they don't have this inheritance of lands and things like that. But Charles V's son, Don John, is not even he's not even like a legitimate son. He's born to a dancer, and he ends up being legitimized by Philip II, and then Pius V brings him to lead this charge. And it's basically like all of Europe is in disarray at this time, and they won't come together to defend Italy from being invaded by the Turkish Ottomans, and he kind of leads this charge.
Yeah, and on top of that, before we even get to Lepanto, the relations between the Spanish and the papacy had largely broken down, politically speaking. And, there's no question in religion, but politically, it starts actually with Philip II, when he's, after Charles V had retired and finally made him de facto king of Spain. Philip gets ticked off with Pope Paul IV, because Pope Paul IV issued a bull, and trads know this bull, although we're not going to talk about the reason why trads tend to quote it tonight, cum ex apostolatus officio. And in that bull, apart from the questions about papal elections and such, they say that any monarch, any aristocrat, any office of state, any elected head, also is guilty of the crimes of heresy, schism, is excommunicated and loses their secular office too. So Philip II, Henri II in France, they're all mad about this. So what Philip does, he breaks off diplomatic relations with the papacy altogether. Wow. Pius IV kind of works with him, says, come on, can't we get something together just to help Trent? So that he reestablishes, and then after the Council of Trent, Philip, brings in all of Trent's reforms, and then he breaks off diplomatic relations again to show, hey, I'm independent, even though I'm a true Catholic. Yeah. So it's
what's also interesting, because I did like a deep dive into Pius V, St. Pope Pius V today, because I didn't really know much about him, but he was a Grand Inquisitor for the Roman Inquisition, and he actually has a bit of butting heads with Pope Pius IV, because Pope Pius IV wants to make his 13-year-old nephew a cardinal, and I forgot Pope Pius V's actual birth name, but Michael
Gislieri.
Okay, so he kind of butts heads with Pius IV and says, no, this is no good. You can't do this. And Pope Pius IV sends him out of Rome, and on his way out of Rome, Pope Pius IV dies, and then they call a conclave, and he ends up getting elected. And in order to kind of show that there's no animosity, he chooses the name Pius V in a way to try to, you know, show the continuity between them and to show that there's not any animosity there between them. It was very diplomatic what he did.
Right. It was also an act of humility on his part too, to take the name of someone that he'd suffered under. Actually, Pope Paul IV had lived longer. He might have ended up in jail, because what Pope Paul IV at the end of his reign, he just starts thinking everybody's a heretic, starts putting people in jail at random. And there's a Spanish bishop that Paul IV thinks is a heretic. He wants him hauled into Rome for a trial. And after Ghislieri had interviewed him, he said, no, there's nothing wrong with this. He's perfectly orthodox. And Paul IV is absolutely frustrated. He repents of ever having made Ghislieri a cardinal, and then he dies a month later. So if he was going to do something about it, he lost his chance.
The man, and I had never read Chesterton's poem either, and I read it today, and there's this one stanza in the poem that just really stood out to me, and it's the north is full of tangled things in text and aching eyes. Now he's talking about Northern Europe, how they're going through the Reformation and they're obsessed with sola scriptura, right? That's what he's talking about there. And dead is all the innocence and of anger and surprise. And Christian killeth Christian in a narrow dusty, and Christian dreadeth Christ that hath a newer face of doom. And Christian hateth Mary that God kissed in Galilee. That line, Christian hateth Mary that God kissed in Galilee, I had to stop reading and like really think about that. And it's just what was going on at this time in Europe was just, and then the last line of that is, but Don John of Austria is riding to the sea. That while all of this turmoil is going on in Europe, and you have countries at war with each other, and nobody will heed the call to stop them, to stop the Muslims from coming, you get Don John of Austria comes in with the Crusader spirit, this bastard, and he just goes in and he's ready to go and take charge of the situation. It's a pretty amazing turn of events.
It's an incredible, just all the movements that are happening, and clearly, you know, you see God's providential will at work, honestly, with the way which it was a hopeless situation. I mean, you even had the Turks invaded Vienna in 1529. This is not the famous invasion people are more familiar with, where Sobieski, the king of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, comes down with the winged hussars. That's 150 years later. 1529, Vienna just barely, you know, managed to survive. And the Turks withdraw their army, you know, and still, you know, there's fighting in the Holy Roman Empire. They're demanding more concessions out of Charles V in order to bring in more troops to defend the eastern marches of the empire. The French more or less support the Turks, not directly, of course, but indirectly, because that's the way to weaken the empire in Spain.
Yeah.
Right.
So now how much earlier before this does Spain drive the Muslims out? Like, is it recent memory?
1492 is when.
Yeah. So we're about 80 years or so. I mean,
yeah, so it's within a century.
Even then, I mean, they were relegated to the smaller kingdom of Granada. And so they, you know, weren't a major factor in the general Spanish life. Then, you know, finally they're, you know, Isabella and Ferdinand lay, you know, waste to the kingdom of Granada, and then annex that into the kingdom of Spain. They also reformed the Spanish army. And that's one of the bigger things in that, because they're starting to play a role in the European stage. After Granada, they end up intervening in Naples, which had been an Aragonese possession. And the French had taken it over during the Italian wars. And they actually reformed the army, because their army was designed to fight, you know, the Muslims in Granada, right? And on Andalus way back in the day. So they reformed it to make it a more major European army. And what they do is they pick up on the Swiss pike the Swiss Confederacy, their pikemen, and in the Holy Roman Empire, how you had Landsknechts. And Landsknechts were like another reform based on the Swiss model. And there was a guy named Martin von Frusberg, and he's called the father of the Landsknechts. He was classically trained, and he'd read, you know, about Alexander the Great's pike phalanxes and whatnot. He sees the Swiss, and he look at this disordered mass that's basically meant to march out to stop our cavalry charges. What if we could make them mobile like the ancient phalanx and combined cavalry, the way Alexander's army was meant to work. And thus you get, the Landsknechts, which in German literally means land knights because they're armored up like a knight on horseback. Yet they, are, big, big masses of pikemen basically. And they were private military corps. They were mercenaries. They'd go for the highest bidder. That's why when their payment goes into arrears in 1527, they march on Rome. And of course, there's a big contingent of them that are Lutheran, because some of the Landsknecht corps went Lutheran. Some were still Catholic.
Yeah.
But ultimately you'd fight together if your pay was good enough. You didn't care.
Yeah.
So the Spanish incorporate those reforms early on under Maximilian I, and they see what's going on there. And so they incorporate the pike, and they also incorporate it into swordsmen and arquebusiers or riflemen. And so that becomes the Spanish tercio, which is, a mix of pikemen, shot, and swordsmen to guard your flanks. So and that became the dominant battle, unit, basically until the 30 Years' War. So they design their ships so they have large contingents of tercios that can engage using those same tactics. And so naval warfare for a very long time was based around the Roman principle of taking a naval battle and turning it into a land battle.
Yeah.
Right? Now the Romans say, yeah, good. And there's essentially.
Tercio.
So with the tercio, the pikemen, they're loose enough where the arquebusiers will run in, and the way the arquebus works is if everyone knows a flintlock, right?
Yeah.
You guys shoot a flintlock? Yeah. A matchlock was the weapon at that time. The arquebus is a matchlock, and the way the matchlock. Do you guys know much about matchlocks?
No.
Same thing as flintlock, but instead of using flint to strike steel and
You got a
spark,
rope.
it's
a
a lit rope.
Yeah, it's a rope made out of soaked in saltpeter, and it would you'd light it, you'd coil it around your arm, or there were even little hooks on the stock of the rifle. I wouldn't say rifle; it's the wrong term, but of the arquebus in order to put it in. Then you'd open your pan, you put your primer in, you'd close that, you'd do just like with a flintlock. What's that?
Can you find a picture of it, Rob?
Matchlock? Yeah. Give me a second.
Yes.
Anyway, then you do the ramrod, just like if you've seen any film on a flintlock, it's the exact same, principle mechanism. You got bandoliers on, you pour that in with your shot. Then, you put it, usually you had a stand. They all have stands, like in the picture, you see them with stands, and they'd stick it. Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
the match goes into a trigger, based on the trigger mechanism. When you open up the primer, you pull the trigger mechanism, that comes in, big flame goes up, and it may shoot immediately. It may take a few seconds.
Oh my
Sometimes
gosh.
up to 10 or 11. If you ever shot one, it's kind of wild, the differing rates, even when you have the same primer, it depending on how
It's not like you're like, okay, I'm lined up, I'm ready to go.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I'm lined up. Okay, hurry up.
So
What I found so interesting about listening to because as I'm hearing about all these different stories, I'm imagining like pirate ships going at each other with cannons going at each other and them trying to take the ships down, because I'm thinking of a naval army in like the 19th century or something.
Mm-hmm.
But watching what you presented, I couldn't believe the style of boats they used and how they actually fought these battles.
Well, yeah, the boats that they used, they were galleys, and it's actually the very last conflict in terms of in naval galleys. Yeah, it's great. If you're not used to this,
Rob, is that going to break YouTube
that's pretty
rules?
quick.
No,
that means that's a good load of the primer, and it's a well-made primer. That back in the day, though, you don't know who's making your loads. You can't, unless you're doing it all yourself. You might not get that effect. It might be, and then you wait, and then it fires, and you got to be patient and sit there, even though you might get shot in the middle of it.
Yeah. The galley boats, they're basically like 25 guys. What is it? What are they called?
Galleasses.
Yeah. So there's basically like oars sticking out of the boat, 25 or so on each side, and you kind of have like slaves rowing the boat, and you go towards each other basically, and then you try to board the enemy ship, and you have hand-to-hand combat. So because I even had somebody today try to downplay the role of divine providence in this battle. This guy Tom that I go back and forth with, and he tried to downplay the role of divine providence. He's like, modern historians, they say that the Christians actually outnumbered the Turks, and he tried to just downplay it. But when you read the accounts, the wind is at the back sails of the Turks, and they are racing in.
Yes, and so there's so many things that favor the Turks in terms of men. At least what's the best historiography that you can do, you're coming up with almost even numbers. But in terms of ships, the Turks have greater ships, larger number, and they had been successful in nearly every naval engagement. Just a few years before that, you have the Battle of Dara, similarly against the Venetians, the Spanish, and the Papal fleet. And the Ottomans had defeated them pretty soundly. And again, the numbers were almost even, right? They didn't have the gun galleasses and the Venetians. We'll talk about those in a minute. They actually don't play that big of a role in the battle, but it's just in the outset. But the galleys, because you think of master and commander, you think of Horatio Hornblower, all these wonderful things to watch, by the way. That's not the world of naval warfare we're at in the 16th century. You're still at galleys in the Mediterranean, just like in Roman times, except now they got guns. And you're mostly aiming to board the enemy ship and make it a land battle, or you're looking to ram the enemy ship and sink it. And any number of those things, come into play. You actually facing off and giving a full broadside. That's Trafalgar. That's master and commander type of stuff, which it's wonderful, actually, all that. But that's hundreds of years off, and it's a bloody battle. And this was a bloody battle in terms of the number of people fighting, the number of people lost, especially on the Turkish side. There were, some estimates give it as high as 40,000 lost on the Turkish side.
Yeah, you don't see casualty numbers like that again until World War I. Like that's the next time. It's hundreds of years later before you see a battle.
I'd say but you get so you have that, and then you have the fact that the Turks outnumber the Christian fleet, and there are some mistakes that Ali Pasha, who's the admiral, the Turkish side, makes. He, instead of he does a flanking maneuver on the wrong side, but he also tries to, get in and lead because he's taking advantage of the wind. He wants to take out the center. It's not a bad idea, but the normal way that the Turks work is to remove the flanks and then take the center and then that's the whole point of that crescent formation. They want,
so it's not a religious, the crescent versus
the cross. It's not just
right?
And that's like a secondary effect. Actually, it actually has a purpose. Just like the cross formation on the Christian side, it's not just a religious thing. There's actually a tactic there, navally speaking. That's to keep the strength of the middle and to repel flank attacks. But they put Ali Pasha put so much into the center that the flanks aren't able, because what they did at Dara, the flanks take out the flanks on the Holy League fleet, and then they overwhelm the center, and that's how they completely vanquished the Holy League at Dara. This time they didn't go for the same tactic, which could have worked actually, apart from divine providence. Ali Pasha decides to just try to take the center out right away. Now the Venetian galleys had laid waste to a lot of his vanguard in the center, but they end up, because I saw some historical documentary. I think it was on the History Channel, and I usually watch those things mostly to get the talking heads and buy their books and to see if they're full of nonsense or if they actually have primary sources and valid arguments to make. But in this documentary, they're making this huge deal out of these Venetian galleasses, and they're the forerunner of the stuff you see 100 years later, right? They're higher off the water. They're still a galley, but they're much higher off the water. It's harder to hit them, and it's almost impossible for the Turkish ships to board them. So it is very useful. There's only 6 of them, and they end up trailing off out of the main battle, and they don't come back in till the end of it. So they don't actually matter that much for the battle. It's largely, Colonna and Don Juan of Austria, the Spanish and the Holy League fleet, the Spanish tercios, mowing down the Turks as soon as they're able to get the hooks in and board the ships. And it's also the disastrous fall of the Turkish right flank, which I can't remember which admiral. I believe it was Sebastiano Venier that on the Christian side that goes after them because it was Venetians, right? On that Christian left flank, Turkish right. Well, they end up completely vanquishing the Ottoman right. And then those ships are able to return to the middle, where Don Juan and Marc Antonio Colonna are completely smashing Ali Pasha's flagship El Sultana. And of course, the other fun thing, so Cervantes, Miguel Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, he actually boards El Sultana, and
Gets his left hand blown off, right?
It's his left hand blown off during the battle. But present on El Sultana is all of Ali Pasha's treasure, because he was actually formerly in disgrace and he was only put back into place because the Sultan didn't have enough skilled sailors to take the fleet where he wanted them to go. And he wanted them to land an amphibious force in Italy. He actually didn't mean for them to fight a formal battle. On top of that, he wanted them to weather in a different spot away from Lepanto. But by the time Ali Pasha gets the orders, it's too late. And then the Holy League is already ready to box them into the peninsula by Lepanto. So there's that. But then Ali Pasha, because he knows the Sultan under his treasure while he's gone, he's got all of his treasure.
Hold on. YouTube removed our video.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
The gun
stream was stopped because it did not comply with YouTube's policy.
You fired the gun. I told you.
Oh no,
dude! The new gun rules.
It doesn't say.
Of course,
what the reason was.
It was definitely that guy. I knew it with all those new rules.
That was a YouTube video that I played.
I'm just telling you, that's what it was.
No, because YouTube's policy is for semi-automatic weapons. That was not a semi-automatic weapon.
I wonder why. I wonder what happened. Do you think they'll put it back up, or you think we got a channel strike?
I don't know.
Damn.
Yeah.
I don't think it's my cigar.
Content that shows someone live streaming while holding, handling, or transporting a firearm isn't allowed on YouTube. I knew it. As soon as you
wait. Where did you get that
message?
Where did you get that message?
I didn't even pull my piece.
I knew it.
Wait, where are you seeing that?
This is why you took the gun show off of your stupid channel.
Where are you seeing that?
In the stream, in the app we have, the studio. In studio.
Let me pull it up.
Okay, so if you think we made a mistake, you can appeal our decision. I'll leave that to you. So what does that mean? Did we totally lose it?
Yeah.
What happens with our channel now?
Nothing.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Can we get the stream back up?
Might have to create another one. We can't get this one going again.
Can I add another?
Man, that stinks.
It's unbelievable.
I knew it.
A matchlock. A bloody matchlock.
I knew it. And I didn't know YouTube put those new rules in. I know because I watched Rob's show yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday, but it specifically says semi-automatic weapons.
It's like you have to prove it's from a gun range or something. Like, I think you even need to be careful about the past videos you guys have up where you're like showing stuff on screen.
Flintlocks are semi-automatic, but really, come on.
I know. It's like a historical thing you're trying to
Plus,
show.
We weren't live streaming with a weapon. We
That's
were live streaming showing
studio.
Another YouTube video.
That's so
yeah.
So I'm sure I can appeal successfully.
It's just a stupid algorithm.
Again, it's a bot. A bot took us down for sure, but that's so crazy. Holy cow.
Meet your new AI overlords.
So, all right. So all right. So, we can continue the show. We can always edit it later and put it back up.
We can edit. Yeah, we can put it back up.
You can just edit that clip out and then put it back up.
No, I'll be able to appeal it just fine, but there's no way to fix the live stream now. They killed that.
So people go to locals, and we can leave it on X. We'll leave it
I can't even, it won't even let me type in the live chat to tell people to go somewhere else.
Wow. I can do it on X. Let me see.
Because everyone will probably be running to your account and say, hey, what happened? Where'd it go?
That stinks. Ryan's first time coming on and the live and the stupid show gets killed.
Yeah. Well, I've had this happen to me before with the rundown.
That's so annoying. Oh no. All right.
So I guess you can't even talk about the history of firearms anymore, or history that includes firearms.
You could probably do it pre-recorded and get it
pre-screened and then appeal the stuff then directly.
Yeah, but on a live stream it would be a problem.
I got to remember.
Everybody's saying Pelican Plus.
I don't even know if they're. Never mind.
Oh man, Facebook is still up. Rumble's up. I see Rumble comments. I still see X comments are up. Rob doesn't look like he knows. All right, so we still have, hopefully everybody will know to go to X and watch it. We'll have to pop this up later. All right, we're still live streaming.
We're still live.
It's still streaming. We'll fix this later. That's all. We'll maybe even cut out all this oh my goodness stuff and we'll give it. All right,
well, now I might as well just grab an AR and sit here with an AR in my lap the rest of the show.
Right?
Screw them.
All right, so let's finish the Lepanto talk though. So Ryan, before we got cut off, where did we leave you?
I think we're talking. Oh, I was talking about Ali Pasha.
Yes,
Sultan Ali Pasha,
the treasure on his ship.
Yeah, so he had all of his treasure on his flagship Sultana because of the fact that he was afraid that if he left it in Constantinople in his palace, then the Sultan would have plundered it all in his absence, and so he kept it on the ship. And then, of course, he gets shot. If I'm not mistaken, he gets shot by an arquebus bullet right in the head, and then so he's done. And after the Spanish secure the ship, they plunder all the treasure. Along with the standard and the flagship, and then once the morale drops in the Turkish center, and they more or less collapse fairly easily, and then the last fight was on the Christian right or the Turkish left of the battle. So, and that was commanded by Doria, and he missed his position, right, and so he didn't didn't get in place, and so he got trapped by the Turks, but now other ships notice that he's in trouble. I'm trying to remember exactly, how all that, falls out, because Ulish Ali, who's the commander in the Turkish left flank, he swings around to Colonna's flank, right? And Doria's in the wrong spot. So then they get in a really tight, battles, and, which more hand-to-hand fighting, and it's it's a long run, but eventually the left flank of the fleet is able to come and help out. The Venetian galleasses come back and shoot some of the rear guard of the Turks. The Janissaries are, if you don't know what the Janissaries are, they're an elite corps in the Ottoman infantry. They were originally they're almost
six.
They're all
what's that? They're like the SEAL Team 6.
Well, yeah, they're all kidnapped Christian
They're actually
kids.
drawn from Christians. They're abducted. They're children from Christian parents that are forcibly taken and forcibly converted to Islam. And, a lot of times they're castrated. Sometimes they're merely circumcised according to Islamic law when they're 14. But mostly it's to keep them loyal. Right? So a lot of them end up being eunuchs. They fight, with all kinds of the elite, tools and of the trade. They're very elite corps. And so, and there's different ranks of them and everything, but they're more, for land warfare. They never really became the equal, say, of the Spanish fighting at sea. So, and that's another weakness that the Janissaries have in that. And so, and what happens during a lot of the pitched fighting between ships, they run out of bullets, they run out of weapons, they run out of powder. So they end up getting massacred during all of it. Is that they end up not mattering really for the battle like you'd think they were.
The thing is, like when the Turks would go to war, they were so horrific in what they would do to just civilian populations after the armies were defeated. Like they would go through, they would slaughter all the men, they would take all the children and women and just put them in part of the slave trade. So after these battles are actually done, the Christians show no quarter to the Turks. They just completely massacre them, and especially those who are able to like operate those ships, right? Like they want to make sure they're not able to go back and like put together another corps of fighters to continue on.
Here's a fun bit. So right before this battle, only about 7 years before this battle, you have the Knights of Malta and the Siege of Malta, right? So the commander of the Knights of Malta was La Valette. And this guy is a man's man. He doesn't take crap. He's 70 years old leading the knights in battle at Malta, right? Well, when he was young, he was abducted by a Turkish raid. You know, they'd killed, raided the village, and he was taken and made as to be a galley slave. And eventually, he grows up, he escapes, he gets back to Europe, becomes a Knight of Malta. As a Knight of Malta, during a Maltese raid, back when they were still housed in Rhodes, he finds the Turk slaver that sold him into slavery. So he makes him a slave on his own galleon.
Wow, look at that.
Going away.
It's so interesting that like the Knights of Malta still exist, right? Like a lot of these orders still exist into the modern day. Now, I mean, they kind of got gutted under Francis a bit, but
they were gutted before. I mean, part of it, the whole crusading era, is just anachronistic now. So what is even the point of the Knights of Malta? And this becomes even before Vatican II. This is a big problem for them. What's the point? Are they kept in military readiness? No, a lot of it's honor. A lot of it's like, place for nobility or other people, various honors, do, social work, even before Vatican II. A lot of that is really the case. So, and of course, there's a real sense in which they are still serving the church, and they're just not as cool as when they've got swords and guns and grenades and all the cool things that they had in their, like they had this one thing, they had this hoop that almost like a hula hoop, right? Except it was wrapped around with, again, it was cloth and rope that was soaked in saltpeter. And they'd light that on fire and send it down a hill as the Turks were coming up. And because the Turks, they have a lot of clothing, it's easy to catch on fire. All I have to do is touch them practically. And they're, and they load it up with pitch and saltpeter and all these things. And these hoops of fire just come down, and the front, imagine like you're the front, vanguard of this army. It's going to charge in, and you're getting, hit with all of this fire hoops, and you're trying to avoid it. And now you're on fire. And it's inexplicable. You just stop. It takes all the impetus out of your charge, and then it drops the morale for the guys in the back, and you have to basically stop the whole thing and regroup. And then you do, and then you don't see the hoops of fire, so you start running in, and next thing you know, there's explosions, and half your legs missing because they're throwing grenades, hollowed out cannonballs full of gunpowder and shrapnel, right? Almost like a little shotgun blast. They just throw these things out there, and and that's some of what they did at when the Turks were assaulting both St. Elmo and St. Michael's. So that happened. That's just a few years before. Massive victory. It didn't affect the fleet, but affected their army, their morale, their numbers. So you mentioned something earlier that you're arguing with someone who's saying, hey, modern historians say this battle didn't matter, whatever. That's a common thing. And you try to watch any kind of secular history documentary on Lepanto, and they're going to say, hey, this battle didn't really matter much. The Turks rebuilt their fleet in 6 months. It wasn't a big deal. No. And this is all, again, revision. You get this term revisionist history. And there is a sense, there's a sense in where that's a positive thing and where it's a negative thing. Where it's a positive thing is where you're revising according to the sources, according to documents, archaeology, what actually happened during a period of time. On the bad side of it is when you're revising it based on politics, based on the view you want to put to events. And moderns are not unique in terms of revisionist history. There's different, epochs where people revised history. The English, during the English Civil War, they revised the very unpopular last 2 decades of Elizabeth's reign. The last decade of Elizabeth's reign she was very unpopular. Yeah. People wanted change all around. People did not remember Elizabeth as a golden age going into the Stuarts, But once you get to Charles I, and you have the failed raid on Cadiz. Hey, Francis Drake, he raided Spain. He took Cadiz, no problem. And now here, the Duke of Buckingham, Charles's little lackey there, he can't even get close to the city. And it failed in New Rochelle. All these failures now get this kind of revisionist history going. Hey, but it was glorious under Elizabeth, and that's where the golden age.
Well, you also have it after the Enlightenment. Everyone is trying to downplay the miraculous. Everybody's trying to materialize everything, right? So when I went to Italy, we visited the Holy House of Loretto, and now the legend behind the Holy House of Loretto is that angels carried it from Nazareth all the way to Loretto. And the woman giving us the tour tells us that story, and then she's like, but really there might have been a crusader by the name of Angel, and he brought it. And I'm like, listen, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear the legend, because the legend is actually important, right? So and even this event, like, no, the divine providence in it is actually very important, because it's good for all of us to just believe the legend, and it gives you a grander understanding of God's providence in the workings of humanity, because in the end you're actually going to find out that God did have his hand in all of the events of history, and that they're all working towards his glory in the end. So these things that we want to write off to just these materialistic coincidences are not really those at all. They are God's hand in all of these events.
And you look at certain things I've already laid out, like in the battle, how the Turks, as they had defeated a similar fleet, and but there's a difference in their tactics all of a sudden, which doesn't really make sense, even by a seasoned naval commander. Mm-hmm. And that allows for, the victory, where previously they had almost as many ships at Dara, not quite as many, and that failed, and so this one succeeded. Why? Ultimately, I think Pius V leading everyone to pray the Rosary for the victory at Lepanto, and you look at the effects of it. There's two things. So, in point of fact, historically, the Turks did rebuild their fleet in 6 months. They were still a menace, but they weren't nearly as bold.
I was just going to say, as confident and as bold in going and conquering. It did something to their self-esteem to get conquered like that.
It'll take another 100 years to get another Holy League against the Turks, and that happens during the War of Spanish Succession, the Holy League, the Second Holy League, where Eugene of Savoy just crushes the Turks at Zenta, and in many other places too, he crushes them. But that's another bit of battle splaining that'll get us going forever and ever. But really here, they don't, materialize another Holy League, for that time. But the Turks still do not send an amphibious force to Italy. Mm-hmm. They do not try to invade Rome, which was the plan. They do not, stray beyond Greece. They're actually nervous about it. So there is a change, and it's also a moral victory. And so even Elizabeth over in England rings the bells to note the triumph of Lepanto once news of it reaches England. So. And of course, how did that news reach England? Well, there's spies in the English college in Rome that hear about it and pass on the report. But anyway,
and you think about the effect it has on the church, right? So now the Pope institutes the Feast of Our Lady of Victory, and then Gregory changes it to the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, and now the Rosary is now. It's a practice spread throughout the church because of this feast day. It has very practical effects to how it affects the life of the church. I was telling Rob, I want to start paying closer attention to the liturgical calendar, especially the old calendar, because a lot of these historical events are enshrined in that calendar under different Marian feast days. These historical events that took place, and you name it, different, Our Lady of something, and it winds up, if you look deeper into where that feast originates from, is from some historical event.
Exaltation of the Holy Cross last month.
Yes.
Where does that come from? It comes from the final war between the Eastern Romans and the Persians.
Yeah.
And the Sassanids had invaded and taken all of Roman territory in the east, and they took the true cross from Jerusalem, took it back to Persia, and they were, on the verge of completely crushing the Eastern Roman Empire. They'd besiege Constantinople. They'd make a deal with the Proto-Bulgars, the Avars, right? And they were besieging on the other side. And it's a guy from North Africa, Heraclius, and he sails to Constantinople, usurps the throne from the previous emperor, who was a big loser, and he reforms the army. And he realized the situation. There's only one way to make this work. We're just going to march right into Persian territory, make them pull us back.
Yeah.
And he does that. He goes in the heart. He takes back Ctesiphon, or it's just a little bit north of Baghdad. He goes even further into Persian territory, and the Persians like great, and they move back. They're on a forced march, and then he smashes them, and they have to go to peace. And so all Roman territory is restored. The true cross is restored. Heraclius, he tries to carry it in, and as the ancient who are the historians that relate this? Zonaras, who's a Greek historian, he relates this. There's a couple other historians that relate this from the time. So Heraclius is robed in all the gold and splendor of a Roman emperor in Constantinople. And he tries to carry the true cross back into Jerusalem. And he feels stopped by this invisible force. And St. Sophronius comes to him, whether by divine light or just seeing what's going on and figuring it out, who knows? But he says, you can't carry the Lord's cross, robed as a king as you are, as a Caesar. The Caesars under whom he was put to death. No, you need to come in as he was, poor and humble. So Heraclius strips down to his tunic, and he carries the cross, and then he's able to enter the city without any further problem, and puts the cross then back into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, such as it was at that time.
That's amazing. I love hearing stories like that. I saw this kid, Christendom Quarterly. I don't know who he is. I just started following him, but he wrote this, and I kind of liked it. He said, "Be the bastard that sets sail. That's what the Battle of Lepanto means for you, Western man. There is much the church saved the West. There is much the church saved the West at the Battle of Lepanto posting. This simply plays into Catholic failing of waiting for our hierarchy and our institution to win the battle. Nothing could be further from the truth. Lepanto is the story of how the least likely man risked everything for the sake of the cross. This is the lesson we need to take from. This is the lesson men of Christendom need to learn. Here's the story." And then he kind of goes through the story just about how Don Juan really was a nobody. He was a bastard, and he comes and he kind of puts this thing together. And he said, among the princes of Christendom, he was the last man you'd pick. No inheritance, no wealth, no claim to rule. Yet when the Ottoman fleet gathered in the waters just beyond Italy, this forgotten son was the one who answered, because no one else would. Yes, the Pope called for the defense of Christendom, and that is more than we have today. But no one sent Don personally. Nobody sent Don Juan personally. No one gave him the wealth to outfit an army. The most likely outcome was that they'd all die. Don Juan went because someone had to. That's the pattern of every important battle in Christian history. One man alone, often betrayed by his Christian brothers, under-resourced, and the only small band of bed-dragged warriors standing in victory against the pagan hordes. No Crusader victory was ever a triumph of Christian unity. Most of Christendom sat Lepanto out. France stayed home. Protestant Europe stayed home. Even the most of Italy stayed home. The Holy League was a minority of the willing, a handful of ships and a handful of men who made the decision to go. And that's the truth. History turns on the ones who go, not on the ones who wait for orders, not on the ones who whine about the hierarchy, the ones who go. Western man today stands on another shore. The pagan fleets are at our shores again. Our clergy are cautious. Our politicians are compromised. Our institutions are asleep. So what now? You do the same thing Don Juan did. You go. I kind of like that. You know, it's we're in a situation where we're all complaining about, oh, our hierarchy doesn't do that. They're all weak men. It's okay. Like God's going to raise up saints in these times, and we have to really. I'll tell you, man. Like especially. The liturgical calendar is so important because a day like today, if you've been slacking on praying the Rosary, today's the day to get back into it before you go to bed tonight. If you haven't done so yet, it is the month of the Holy Rosary. It is a very important time. I was talking to my wife earlier. My wife just started a consecration to Our Lady today. I'm going to start my fasting again because I kind of slacked off on that the last couple of weeks of summer, but it's time to get our spiritual lives in order. And a day like today, I learned more today about Catholic history than I have in a long time. And I was kind of excited to come on and talk about it tonight.
And then YouTube said no.
And YouTube said no.
We'll get it back for you. We'll get it back up.
Right. No, that's absolutely the case. And you look at the Rosary as a devotion, and we see it at different places. You see it in Alanis what's his name? De La Roche. you see, it has very, it's the Dominican tradition, it's the Dominican Rosary, right? And Pius V, as a Dominican, brings that to be, a popular devotional life of the church. And it was a devotion, and you see it sprinkled around in different places. You see it in England pre-Reformation. You see it in big revivals that happen, like Alanis de la Roche in places in Germany. And it has all the hallmarks of going, because you get this thing, well, come on, Our Lady didn't reveal the Rosary to St. Dominic. It developed over time. There's no evidence in all the lives and chronicles of St. Dominic of Our Lady giving the Rosary. And you see this amongst historians, right? And at the same time, I think it's fair to say, one, we have so many popes who've talked about Dominic receiving the Rosary from Our Lady. It's really hard to say, all right, popes can err in questions of fact. Maybe that is wrong in questions of fact. But my inclination is to look the other way and say, no, there's actually truth in that. It just doesn't unfold in this very neat way you see it laid out after, in the Counter-Reformation period. Rather, it's that Dominic has these mysteries that are part of the tradition of the Dominican order. And that is essentially the Rosary that Our Lady gave to him. And this is popularized amongst third order Dominicans and spread around, and it becomes a thing. And then it becomes a thing in pre-Reformation attempts to reforming the church on the part of Dominicans, like Alanis de la Roche. And you look at the mysteries of the Rosary, it goes back to all the traditions of St. Dominic that you see perpetuated by Herman de Romani and Jordan of Saxony. Right, Jordan of Saxony is the guy who makes the Dominican order. St. Dominic's got the vision, he has the energy, he plants the seed, but it's under Jordan of Saxony that the flower of the Dominican order blossoms. And most people have no idea who it is, but without Blessed Jordan of Saxony, there is no Dominican order.
It's like you said, maybe it wasn't neatly packaged the way we have it now under St. Dominic, but that's never how the church's tradition works out. It's just never how it goes. It's always
there's all kinds of Rosary devotions that even predate Dominic. Yeah. And it's not like the Rosary. There was never anything else like this ever before. All of a sudden Dominic gets it and now he's got it. No, it's rather this was all organized in a very specific way. And then that's what develops in the Dominican tradition. And then through Pius V, through the occasion of Lepanto, is then given and recommended to the entire church, and then becomes a thing in the church and never ceases to. It becomes a mainstay. Now, other religious orders have the rosaries. The Franciscans have the rosary. The Servites have the rosary. You look at other, it differs from the Dominican rosary, but the Dominican rosary is the one that becomes dominant in the life of the church. And that is, again, part of divine providence. And that's very much like what Pope Leo XIII talked about in his encyclical on the Rosary.
So Nicole says, our oldest daughter has the coolest Feast of the Rosary story. Before she was even dating someone, she said she would get married on October 7th, 2023, because it was a Saturday. She ended up meeting her husband and getting married on that date. They both made their consecration that year, their consecration that day as well. And the Rosary prayed aloud before their wedding mass. Yeah, like things like that, where you see God's providence working in things, and especially Our Lady's providence. Like, I was talking with someone this morning. They were saying that like they pray their rosary on their commute on the way in, and I do that too. That's when I have time to pray my rosary. So I pray it on the way in the morning. And it's hard to meditate when you're driving and trying to pay attention to other things, but sometimes if you can't meditate, like the most important part of the rosary is just developing a deeper devotion to Our Lady and just having a love for her and her, just that relationship with her. So even if you're not great at meditating, things like that, it's very important for your devotional life and for your love. This whole thing, I am going to pray for Pope St. Pius V's intercession constantly after, and that's kind of the joy of learning about the saints, right? Like once you get an insight into the life of that saint, you start to develop a love for that saint, and you start to like see something about them where now you have this kindred spirit with that saint. And that's what God wants from us. He wants you to love your older siblings in the faith. So maybe he'll grant you a little favor in that saint's honor because he wants you to grow more and more attached to them.
Mm-hmm. That's what the whole point of the community of saints, right? And that we are not alone. We are not just here. It's like we have them up there as well as the church suffering, praying for us and praying for the deliverance of the church today. And he actually made a point earlier about the hierarchy. Nobody waited for the lazy hierarchy to get in order, pushing this. And you look at the whole history of bishops. I'm actually writing a book now on the history of bishops, of saintly bishops principally. And when you see in every age of the church, most bishops are mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
You have it's either attributed alternatively to St. John Chrysostom and St. Peter Eulogus. I'm not sure which one actually said it. I got to look back. But is it that the road to hell is paved with the skulls of bishops? That's in the 4th century.
Yeah.
That's not like a modern thing. Most bishops in the history of the church have been mediocre. And then you have a minority that are saintly and a minority that are evil. In almost every generation. You just
what's interesting is the reason you only think that the bishops of the past were good is because you only tell the stories of the saintly ones.
Right, exactly.
So those are the ones that live on, and you read the story of some saintly bishop from the 5th and 7th century, and you're like, this is what the church was like. And it's like, that's not actually what the church was like. It's
not all the bishops are like that.
Yeah, 500 years from now, people will remember Bishop Schneider, but probably not Supich. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Like you only tell the stories of the heroes, right? So
this is more infamous, like Talleyrand. We remember Talleyrand because he's specifically so.
I mean, people will remember McCarrick, obviously.
Yeah, sadly, better if we didn't. But infelicitous memory. But you see things of this nature, but in Augustine, you get in the 5th century. Say, you have Saint Augustine. Everyone knows Saint Augustine. You have St. Ambrose, nearly, just a generation before, overlapping with him. You've got, a few other holy bishops. And, what about all the other bishops? Well, they don't get named. Some of them were just good bishops, not particularly bad.
You had the Donatist bishops.
Yeah, the Donatist.
We don't know their names.
You don't know their names. We just know the kind of stuff
we know.
Sanctioned. We know, like, Augustine's bishop was actually Greek. He didn't speak Latin well enough. That's why he made St. Augustine preach for him, because he noticed St. Augustine was an eloquent preacher, whereas his bishop didn't know Latin particularly well enough to preach in it. So, but he knew Greek, and it was, he was an okay bishop, wasn't a great bishop, wasn't a terribly bad bishop. Again, and that's the case for most bishops in the history of the church. Just doing their job, doing their thing. Some of them have their vices, they have their problems. It's the ones that stands out are that you get your St. Francois de Sales, and you get your St. Robert Bellarmines, and you get your St. John Fishers, and your St. Charles Borromeos, and other really venerable bishops in the past, Bishop Golti. Just trying to think of other, like, more recently, Bishop Sheen, at least. There's debate about him after Vatican II and what he did in his diocese in Rochester, but there's holy personages, good bishops. Cardinal Wiseman in the 19th century. You've got Cardinal Beroulet. I can read French, but I can't. Cardinal Beroulet, in the 17th century, great French bishop.
So look, I listened to Chris Check did a talk on Lepanto today, and he talks about St. Pope Pius V, and I just want to play this clip real quick because this
send it to me.
He doesn't have any guns, does he?
No. Yeah, you know what? I'll put it into the chat, actually, Rob. Hang on. Let's see.
So just because we're not on YouTube doesn't mean we have to go back to you putting your phone up to the microphone.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. It's only a minute, so it's perfect. It's going through now. Just give it a sec. It's just Pope Pius V, the things that were going on it should be through there now. He's just such a heroic man that you see why they canonized him.
Got it.
All right.
Of pure life. An aged Dominican priest, Michael Gislieri, when he ascended the chair of Peter, faced two foes, Protestantism and Islam. He was up to the task. He had served as Grand Inquisitor, and the austerity of his private mortifications contrasted starkly with the lifestyles of his Renaissance forebears. During his 6-year reign, he promulgated the Council of Trent, published the works of Thomas Aquinas, issued the Roman Catechism, issued a new missal, the very missal today that's used in the extraordinary form, issued a new breviary, created 21 cardinals, excommunicated Queen Elizabeth, and led, aided by St. Charles Borromeo, a reform of the clergy and the episcopacy that had grown soft and degenerate.
It's like, that can happen anytime. Like it can happen anytime. We all think like we have Pope Leo for 20 years and we think we know what we're going to get in his papacy. World events could change the whole like the what the hell word am I looking for? Like the
course of history.
The course, well, even the course of his papacy, what he may think he's going to do. History things could pop up that just change what he winds up doing. It could be, God could intervene and we get another conclave before you ever think possible. Like,
could be 20 years of more synodality. Could be something happens that gives him a sobering moment and says, this isn't good. Or, I mean, you got to, here's a great example from antiquity. You have Pope Vigilius. Pope Vigilius, deacon under Pope Martin. He was Pope Martin. I might be getting his predecessor mixed up. He kind of favored, the Monophysite heresy and found a common, kindred spirit in the Empress Theodora. So she promised him that she would get him into power as Pope, and once he's Pope, he will, restore all the patriarchs that her husband, that Justinian, in line with the Orthodox popes, had got deposed from office. So, because she's a Monophysite, right? Well, what happens is he, first he is intruded on the papacy. They arrest the Pope, put him in the Black Sea in exile somewhere. But all through intrigue with Theodora, or not Theodora. Theodora, the Empress, and Belisarius, who's the general in the Roman general in Italy. So when I say Roman, that's that's the Byzantine Empire. I don't like that term. So we're trying to make it something other. They saw themselves as Roman, but anyway, that's a speech for another day. So he's in Italy. He's the power broker in Italy. So he gets the Pope arrested, sends him out, and he intrudes Vigilius in as an anti-Pope. So then, Justinian finds out the Pope is in jail somewhere in the Black Sea. Hey, who ordered this? I didn't order that. Orders him be released. And, who does it? Nobody actually knows. Was Vigilius involved? We don't actually know. Maybe it was probably more Belisarius, but they engineer for the thing to shipwreck and he dies of starvation on some island. So the report is in the Pope is dead. And of course, the Roman clergy had not accepted Vigilius as a real Pope. And now Belisarius is still pushing. He's our guy. So he passes from being an anti-Pope that is of dubious orthodoxy to a true Pope. The Roman clergy elect him because we don't exactly know if he's a heretic or not, but also Belisarius is here with the sword, and we better elect him. So they do. So now as Pope, Belisarius is sitting there. He's getting missives from Constantinople. Theodora saying, hey, when are you going to do what we agreed upon? At a certain point, he writes a letter. Lady, I cannot do what we agreed upon now that the office of the See of Peter is laid upon my shoulders. And it's quoted in Warren Carroll in full. I found the original of it, that it's quoted in the historian Zonaras in the Greek. It's an interesting letter where he basically lays out, I promised to do all this stuff, but now I have to manage the See of Peter. I can't do that. So, the revenge that he gets is that during the 3 chapters controversy at the Second Council of Constantinople, he doesn't agree with Justinian. So Justinian throws him in prison to think it over for a long time. And so he has his own little bit of suffering for all the part he played in it. But it's interesting. You would look at that on the ground. All right, here's a guy who's promising to the empress, and it was known generally that he's going to restore Monophysite patriarchs. He's going to make the good money would say he's going to push the Monophysite heresy, and he doesn't. He does the opposite. So if that can happen, and he was not noted of being particularly good life even when he was a deacon. So if that can happen, anything can, ultimately.
And the thing is, no matter what's going on, it's God knows what's happening. He has his hand in history always. Like whatever is happening right now, it is all going to work to his glory in the end. So I try not to worry too much about it. Ryan, what before we jump over to locals, we're going to go over to locals in a minute. Is there any chance at you translating what the heck was it? I'm sorry guys. I'm tired. Rob, what is it that his commentary on the apocalypse?
Whose?
Lapide?
Cornelius Lapide's commentary on the apocalypse.
You know, I would have to email Loretto because they're the ones doing that, and they've been paying people. I worked, actually, I did the commentary on 3rd John that appears in their volumes, the third letter of John. I translated that one. And I know they probably have somebody working on it right now. So I would ask them, and I'd probably do it for them since they're doing that if I did. You know, as I've worked for them before, so that'd be easy. I've just been so busy, and I've been behind incredibly. And I've only just gotten back on the horse really from the blow of my first wife dying.
Yeah,
and it's largely, you know, with the help of my second wife, whom I don't deserve. It was too good for me, honestly. But so I just finished Bellarmine's treatise on images and relics, and I'm just overseeing all the bits that are coming back from editing now. Images, relics, the plan. It's the whole section on the Church Triumphant that's in that second volume of the Controversies. I did part of it years ago on canonization. I finally finished up the last bits, but then everyone's asking me for moral theology, and I got to get back in the horse on that one. It's just so tedious. That's the problem. It's like one of those things. It almost made me hate Latin. It's like my job. It's my tool. I want to get freed up and be a millionaire, so I can sit in a hammock and smoke cigars and
don't we all?
Aristophanes making fun of homosexuals. That's rather what I'd be doing.
There's a Father Wolf sermon where he translated part of that commentary that is just so out of this world that it made me want to read.
Yeah, I've read parts of it before. I've never sat down and read it all cover to cover, but man, it's dynamite though. I mean, everything from Lapide is dynamite, but that especially, that apocalypse. And that's like, I remember when I was working with the people at Loretto, they were saying that's like the most sought after thing. We're just trying to get these other things in order. And I translated a preamble for the Acts of the Apostles, and I got called away for other stuff, and I wasn't able to continue with it. And that's when I stopped with them. That wouldn't be a bad gig to get back into if I could find a way to free up the time.
And you guys started doing the rundown again, right?
Yeah. And so it's it's hard because it's just a hobby thing. We're not even sure what we're doing anymore. We just get on and start blabbing. That's kind of like my occasion to Bloviate, and I don't know, just to have a little recreation, just making fun of news events, really largely, and I get to put my mediocre editing skills to work on some video and do little AI face swaps and actually I did a fun one. I don't know if you saw it, the last show we did, where I took Pope Leo's comments about soupage, saying, you know, it's not really pro-life to oppose abortion, but then support the the bad treatment of immigrants, right? Oh, yeah. So I put together a little clip with an AI narration of people like calling for like, we got to get healthcare to illegals. This is pro-life. Yeah. But criminal aliens who rape children in prison, this is not pro-life. It's a public service announcement, right?
It's kind of funny because you have on the left, they all think every immigrant that comes in is a saint and an evangelist. And on the right, we think that every immigrant that comes in is a murderer and a Tren de Aragua. Right. but like there's some in the middle there and stuff, but it's such a politicized.
You got to make distinctions. And so that's why, like, kind of like where I was years ago with racism or even anti-Semitism, like as an ethnic Jew, anti-Semitism mattered to me for a long time. Now I hear it. I'm just not interested. Racism, they've cried wolf on that so much. I mean, you're racist if you notice. You're racist if you don't see color. It's like words are violence, but silence is violence. It's like, come on, you guys. Well, which is it? But it's all communist doublespeak and at every level of it. So migrants are the same thing. And I'm at the point, it's like, and a lot of people don't like my opinion on this, but I think if you got some guy who broke the law, came in the country illegally, and he's working at some Mexican restaurant, and he's got stable living, and he's been here for a year and a day, and he hasn't done any further crimes, there obviously has to be some penalty for entering illegally, but there's got to be, he's a whole different class from these guys who come in and start dealing drugs, pedophiles, murder people, kill people with an 18-wheeler they shouldn't even be driving, all these types of things. Like, no, that's a different class altogether. Like, really, we should be focusing on them guys right now, and then follow up. what kind of, I don't know, maybe that's the wrong way, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Like taking a guy who's set up roots and he's not causing any further crimes. He wants to bring his family here and he likes it. And all right, you did wrong. There's got to be some penalty for having done it wrong. But he's not the same class as these other creeps that you can throw
there should be an order to which we get
the alligators, these guys that rape kids. I don't care. But these other guys, you know, I guess you got to distinguish. Not every migrant is some like saintly thing, just like you said, but they want to class it. It's all one thing. We're only supporting migrants no matter what. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, what about these guys who violate what the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church says about the rights of countries to take in migrants or not, to make their own laws to regulate migration? It's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that the countries have the right to determine, you know, how they will bring them in, if they will, etc. But no. We just gotta, you know, let them all in, and no matter what, without any consequence. I mean, I'm sorry, how's that working in London right now? How's it working?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we don't have to do a whole discussion on immigrants, but there's a lot that also comes into breaking the fabric of your society apart if you let people from other nations come in and stuff like that. So it's just a deep conversation. We'll do another night. But all right, so we're gonna go over to locals. I want to go through Mike Lewis's article. I think Ryan's actually the perfect guest for it. Yeah, we'll head over there. If you guys are not locals members, we'll try and get this video up on YouTube. Rob will contest it with YouTube and see if we have to edit that second out. We'll edit it out.
I can't promise it'll be up tomorrow, but I'll try.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. So if you guys aren't locals members, that's where we get to, you know, talk a little bit different. We could show musket guns getting shot and we don't get banned, right? Things like that. So
and if I could do shameless grift, mediatrixpress.com. I've got a lot of Lives of the Saints. I've got, obviously, people know me for translating Bellarmine and Alfonso Segori. I've also got like the only translation of John Fisher's treatise where he shreds Luther and Luther's sacramentology from A to Z. It's called Against Luther's Babylonian Captivity is the title of the book. Fantastic book. I got Lives of Saints, like Cardinal Baronius. Actually, he's not formally canonized, but awesome life. Nobody buys that book. Is like, who's that guy? I don't know. Man, it's a spiritual powerhouse, that book. So I just encourage you to go in and look at that. And I don't do modern politics. I don't publish anything on Vatican II. I don't publish anything on the New Mass. I don't publish anything on the general trad issues, because I want to do something that's good for recouping the faith and that everybody can read, because everyone who goes to the Novus Ordo should be reading my books. Not because I need that filthy lucre, I do, but that's not why, because these books are good for your soul. That's why I put them back into print. So that's my
Mediatrix Press, right?
Right. www.mediatrixpress. You can just divide it up in your head. Mediatrix, Trix, if you will, .com.
Yeah, guys, we always want you to support people that are doing good work, and Ryan's work is actually very valuable. So if you guys can, shoot over to Mediatrix Press and pick something up. Help them out.
Should we talk about our own sponsor this video?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We gotta butcher this whole video. I mean, we can, but yeah, go ahead. I mean, we'll get it up on YouTube. Yeah, we have we I'm not knocking the sponsor. I'm saying because the video is not on YouTube. I don't know if we'll get it back up.
Yeah, maybe not.
This video is kind of all over the place. No, obviously, Recus Cellars, guys. If you can, support Recus Cellars. They are our favorite sponsor because they're our only sponsor, but they're also amazing. And they changed the code. Use code BASED at checkout for 20% off in honor of Christ the King.
Through the end of the month.
It goes until the end of the month. You can get 20% off. Then after October, they're going to lower it back down to 10%. So if you guys do want to help out the show, go to recusancellars.com, use code BASED at checkout, get your 20% off. After that, it goes down to 10%. This is the best time to do it. And yeah. So, all right, Rob, take us out. Head us over to